Hello and welcome back, guys. This is David here. I am at CEG Dealer School, and by the way, we've been having a lot of fun at Casino Quest, and if you want to book, make sure to book a reservation, casinoquest.biz. We have been getting busy again, so make sure that you book a reservation if you're interested in coming down. But needless to say, today we are moving on to some stories. I have some stories. So we were supposed to film with Scott today, but he couldn't be here today, so we're kind of rescheduling that for next week. But today we have free, cheap, and guaranteed. And I got some very cool stories about a friend of mine who has learned how to sort of work the system. But so there was a system. This is Vegas. So if you came to Vegas a lot, and a lot of you guys out there that I know who are fans of Vegas have been here a lot, you know how to kind of game the system, especially back in the day. Okay, now they have these, doggone, cards that track all your points, and it's kind of hard to game the system. But back in the day, if you knew how to work the system, there was a lot of things that you could ask to get free meals and free play. There were ways to sort of, work the floor people or work the bets and things like this, because it was a little more goosey-goosey. Many casinos, they had supervisors who could just write a ticket, and there you went, off to lunch, free buffet, free whatever, this type of thing. There were even some sort of, gambling desks that, were a little loosey-goosey in how they swapped the coins and the buckets and this type of thing. So there were ways to kind of, game the system, as it were. But anyway, so I'm gonna start this with some throwback stuff, and then I'm gonna lead into some of the, interesting stories. So I have a friend of mine who, was the king of working the system. I don't wanna tell you what his name is. He's still a friend of mine, actually a very good friend, but he is literally the king of working the system. And for some of you, you're gonna feel like, it's a lot of entitlement. But it's Vegas. It's Vegas. You kind of live here long enough, and you either work the system or the system works you, kind of thing, right? All right, so here's the thing. So back in the day, for those of you who are sort of new to the whole Vegas thing, there were a few things that were always free. So of course, free parking was always a thing, and that was always a thing right until pretty recently, for that matter. In fact, a lot of casinos now going back to free parking. But free parking in Vegas, that was always a thing. They were happy just to have you stop, let alone like literally pull up your car anywhere close to the casino and just leave it, run in and gamble, lose all your money. We don't care, kind of thing. Apart from that, the other thing that they had a lot for free was cigarettes. So if you happen to smoke cigarettes back in the day, I mean, dude, I really think that Vegas, as a percentage, right, had like all this, like most of the smokers, like where other cities might be just like half, then this is back in like the 90s, the 80s, 70s. You go to casinos back in the day and they would just lit up. I mean, like lit up, like a fire was just recently snuffed out, and there's just smoke. And bingo halls especially, holy crap, you had to come with oxygen masks to walk through those. I mean, you could literally just be like this, sort of walking to get your hot chocolate and your bingo card. You bingo players know what I mean. It was a little silly, to be honest with you. A lot of smoking, and part of it was because you could get free cigarettes. So especially downtown, a lot of downtown places, not so much the strip places, because strip places were sort of high end, you know what I mean? They didn't mess with that. Always a pack of cigarettes that they had sort of, hidden away. But downtown places, they would have like a little canister, and you could just grab a smoke from the canister. Or they would have some spares, so you didn't have to bum a cigarette from anybody. They'd have them there for you. And if you played any kind of money, especially at the Horseshoe, I love playing at the Horseshoe back in the day, because if you were a $5 player, a whole $5, they would just throw you a pack of smokes. Now, not like, they wouldn't just keep throwing, but, they would, if you were out smokes, they would throw you a pack of smokes. It was that easy. The other thing, of course, that's always been true is sort of free drinks. Nowadays, of course, they have these ultra lounges, so they want to find ways to charge you, like $25 for a drink, because it's kind of got some foo-foo European thing, and it tastes like something or whatever, instead of just like getting hammered and, gambling and drinking. Now it's sort of, gambling and sipping on some, exotic cocktail for even more money, kind of thing. But anyways, there's that. But that's still the case. I mean, other than the toke that you give the cocktail waitress, and for some of you that are very generous, the drinks can be more expensive than if you actually like went to a real bar, right? So I know guys that give like $5 a drink, like holy crap, I could drink like a pitcher at some bars for that. But anyways, that's a thing. All right, so the next is, so if that's the free stuff, there's some other free stuff. Comment below other free stuff that you found in Vegas. I'm sure there was a lot of, free heat kind of thing. So the cheap stuff was food. Food was cheap. Actually, a lot of food was free. So if you could play, if you gambled, you could think of the food as free. But of course, if you gambled like thousands of dollars and you got a free meal, not so free, really. I mean, you saw it as free, because I've been there many times and go, well, at least I got a free flipping meal. I mean, I'm out $2,000, but I got steak and eggs, you know, free, comped. It's fantastic, you know what I mean? So it was a kind of a trade-off. I know there was a lot of nights where I would like go home, I'd have a pack of cigarettes, and I'd be out $800. Those cigarettes were free. You know, like my wife would be, no, those cigarettes were $800. No, those cigarettes were free. The gambling is what cost me. The cigarettes, free. But it depends on how you look at it, I guess. But so for the most part, it was always, even if you didn't gamble, the food was cheap, like cheap. $1.99, $2.99. A friend of mine, we used to work at the Gold Coast together, and we would leave the Gold Coast, go to Arizona Charlie's. When I worked on day shift and I got off, you know, around 4 or 5 o'clock, they had these $1 meatloaf sandwiches back in the day that we used to always do. $1 for meatloaf sandwich and a drink and fries. It was fantastic at Arizona Charlie's. And they also had, if you got off on graveyard is fantastic. So if you got off late and you were able to eat somewhere between 12 and like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, even now really, they have some graveyard specials. But the food out here, it was outrageously cheap during those hours. 24-hour cafes, cheap. The other thing that was cheap often was shows. So shows, entertainment venues were always cheap. Some cases free if you played, of course, but cheap. The king of cheap shows was the Riviera. The Riviera, by the way, when it was open, had one of the largest casino floors in the United States at the time. It was a massive casino floor. So it was, you know, very spread out. It's a huge casino space. I think they even advertised it as such. And they had up to 5 working shows at a time, and they were relatively inexpensive. Some of them were like $10, $9, whatever the case was. They had Crazy Girls, they had Splash, Lacage, they had a comedy show, and some other show. But anyways, I know that they had like 5 shows, and they were probably very cheap, because the whole idea was to get you in there gamble. And a little trivia is Steve Sharippa used to be entertainment director there. So he would actually maitre d' some of the showrooms. So I would go up there, I played quite a bit there, and my friend worked there. And I would go and say, Steve, I want to go to the show. He'd put me on the list kind of thing. And he was a little thinner then too, by the way. Or at least he looked that way, because he would always in his nice maitre d' and stuff. And by the way, the nicest guy, always very nice, you know, very courteous, down to earth. And of course, he went on to star in Sopranos. And the other thing was the rooms. So the rooms were always cheap, right? So nowadays, like it's not the same thing, because now we're a foodie town. You know, we have these exotic drinks, and then the rooms have been upgraded. They're all renovated. They all have all these features. So it's harder to get a free room. Sometimes you'll get, you know, a little bit discounted rooms, but sometimes not so much. If you're here on a weekend, it can be expensive. If you're here doing a large convention, of course, you know, we're in the middle of Corona right now. So everything is cheap, by the way. If you're looking for a cheap room and you happen to be Corona free, if you have a Corona, stay at home, please, for the love of God. But if you're Corona free, come on down. Cheap rooms everywhere. Vegas is here. But anyways, so the rooms were cheap. Every place, especially, you know, even strip hotels. So prior to like the Mirage was a sort of changed things. You know, it became, you know, the center of luxury desert inn. They had a few properties, but other properties on the strip, it was pretty inexpensive, especially if you wanted to gamble or you want a mailing list type of thing. I remember the Trop had this special rate for their gambles, like a $29. So I would be able to stay at one of the garden rooms for $29 a night, even on the weekends. So that was fantastic. But of course, you know, nowadays, not so much. You know, the rooms are a lot more expensive. There's resort fees associated with it, all this other stuff too. So not the same bag. So that was back in the day. Okay, now I'm gonna get to the guaranteed section. So I have some stories for you that are, I hope you find them. They're pretty hilarious. So it's a friend of mine who kind of grew up here in Vegas, visited Vegas quite a bit, and just learned how to game the system. Like, you have no idea. So his thing basically is, he wanted to write a book at one time that was called, you know, Things You Don't Know What to Ask. And in Vegas, that used to be very, very true. Because you didn't know, you know, to go up to the floor supervisor and, you know, ask for comps. And, you know, he knew how to sort of move around the pit and find a supervisor that maybe wasn't watching his play, or come from slots and ask the, you know, different supervisors, this type of thing. He knew how to game the system like there's nobody's business. And one of the things he would look for was any property that had like a guaranteed sign. So if it was guaranteed. So my first example of that is, so me and him, we ended up in Laughlin at one point, and we've been friends for quite a number of years. And we had literally $60 and a full tank of gas, and we're in Laughlin. I don't remember where we were coming from. I think maybe we're just doing a little road trip. We'd drive down to Laughlin every now and then, play a little bit. They had some, you know, kind of some machines that we liked, and, you know, they had nickels, things like this. So Harris was there. It was relatively new property at the time. So we were like, okay, we got the $60. We're gonna go in, we're gonna play a little bit, and if we win, maybe we'll think about staying. Otherwise, we're just gonna stop and maybe get something to eat and leave. So we go in there, and there is a series of slot machines that, you know, look fairly new. You know, we go over and sit down, and at the time they had this like little bucket thing. So if you won enough, you got like a bucket, a steel bucket to put your stuff in. I sit down and my friend goes to another area. He's not interested in playing the machines. I'm sitting down the very middle machine. There's 3 machines where I'm at. There's one on the left, one on the center, and one on the right. About 2 minutes later, this woman comes and brings what's clearly her father. Now, and she's an older woman, and he is just a lot older. He looked a bit confused. This machine was going to act as sort of adult daycare for this gentleman, okay? So like she sits him down and, moves him, puts his hand where the button is and puts a $100 bill into the feeder. And so got $100 in credits, he's got his hand on the button and he's just literally just staring into space. Like he has absolutely no idea that he's sitting at a slot machine. And of course this lady then walks away. So like I'm sitting there playing my machine and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, literally adult daycare going on. This poor guy has no idea what he's doing. But of course, in about a minute, you know exactly what happens. The machine just like literally lights up, starts making noise. By the way, the guy hasn't stopped, not missing a beat, still hitting the button. The button doesn't work, nothing's spinning because he's hit the jackpot. So I think it was a Blazing Sevens, so it's Blazing Sevens, dollar machine, is 10 grand for this. Now here I am. I'm one machine over. Like what stopped me from choosing the first flipping machine? Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. This has happened to me several times, by the way. My friend comes up to me, but this gets to the whole guarantee. I have to start with this story because this is the whole reason why we ended in line at the reservation desk. So the guy is sitting there. My friend comes over to me and he's like, yeah. He's like, he comes over and he says, because he's looking to see, what happened because it's making a lot of noise, lights going off, all this other stuff. And he can clearly see the guy is sitting there just going at the button. And he turns to me and he's like, well, we should move him over one. And it's like, first of all, there is no one. We would literally have to move him over to the other side or switch him with my seat real quick. Okay, but his daughter left him here at the seat. I mean, and plus there's cameras. And but my friend knows that the cameras at a lot of these casinos back in the day, like people followed them, but it wasn't like the biggest deal. You'd be amazed at things people got away with, under these cameras, to be honest with you. There was always a fear of the cameras more than that. If they ran the cameras back and they knew where to look, then that's fine. But not everybody's watching every camera kind of thing. And I'm like, dude, we can't switch seats. There's nowhere to put the guy, first of all. And everybody knows now is looking and they, you know what I mean? But he's like, well, we could be the grandkids, just moving them over a little bit to help them out. And we're like, dude, that's not a thing, because if the lady comes back and he's like, you don't look like his grandkids, and maybe she's the grandkid, you know what I mean? Like that's just not gonna work out. But anyways, so I'm sitting there and I'm telling my friend just to, shut the hell up, a lot of nonsense there. And of course they finally come over and they're adjusting. By the way, the whole time the guy's just sitting there. Now he's like drooling a little bit, and you know what I'm saying? I mean, he's literally just a comatose. This poor guy, like quite literally. Like, I don't understand how he ended up at the casino. I mean, all he was missing was like an oxygen tank to make this whole scene a little more ridiculous, you know what I mean? So there's a woman that comes, and then his daughter comes, and they're yay, $10,000. And luckily though, while they're working with this guy, okay, I hit my machine. At like $300-400, I literally hit my machine. It was enough to actually get a bucket. They had these, Harrods buckets, okay, for this. So I won a nice little bucket, and my machine got to spit out the money, because by that time you could still collect your money in the bucket. So I collect the bucket, I collect my winnings. So now at some point we end up winning a little bit more, this type of thing, and so we decide, hey, we're gonna stay. We're gonna make this a little mini vacation. We got nowhere else to go. I'm thinking we're kind of unemployed at the time, to be honest with you. I think I might have been between jobs, or how did we go? I'm not sure. Anyway, so we end up in line at the registration desk, and there's a guy at the front of the line, and there's a sign, and the sign says at the reservation desk, 100% guaranteed, okay? Love it or leave it kind of thing. And this guy is complaining. He's like, I was using the bathroom, and my toilet didn't work like it should, and I had to use the plunger. And I'm plunging, and I couldn't get my toilet to work. And so, I called maintenance, and they weren't able to help me, and now I have a toilet, and I've had to move rooms, because my toilet, I can't unstop my toilet. My toilet is broken. And my friend is sitting there, and he looks at me, and he goes, our room is so comped. Our room is free. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, our room is free. It's all free. Before he even checked in, he knows he's not gonna use the toilet line, but he's working on it. We get our room key, we go up to our room, and the first thing he does is, oh yeah, this isn't gonna work. He's like, listen here, This is supposed to be blacked out blinds, drapes. Oh no, I can see light coming in all over the place. And look at the AC. The AC is not even blowing in the direction it needs to be. I mean, he came up with a list. He didn't even get to the toilet. We didn't even know if the toilet worked. We were pretty confident the toilet worked, by the way. But I was like, what? By the way, the room was comped, so that was a thing. So he got that for free. So this is one of the things, like, you don't know what to ask, but this is sort of, you know, back in the day. So we actually filed a whole list of complaints as far as the room go, and they were very sad to have us there, you know, living in that kind of situation, you know, because it was just really hard. So my next guaranteed story comes to poor old State Line, now Prim.